Hi, this is Jim from TrekWorld. Today we're going to take a look at Files Magazine's The Star Trek Enterprise Command Book. Remember that in all of these videos, there's going to be a link in the description that you can go to where you will actually be taken to an affiliate link on Amazon showing you the availability of the books that I've been discussing. Now, Files Magazine's produced a series of booklets, big booklets, so I really do consider them books, all throughout the late 1970s, all of the 1980s, and into early 1990s. Usually these books were comprised of information gleaned from interviews and from other online sources. For instance, they might have a passage in here that contains clippings from the local newspaper or from Starlog or something like that. Interviews that were printed in any of those publications. I spoke with James Van Heese, and I might be saying that name wrong, James. I know you're out there. You and I, when I say I spoke with James Van Heese, I traded some emails with him about a year or so ago. Very, very nice gentleman in his email, and it was one of those people that I originally intended to reach up and talk to right up front. But I did inquire of him that there were some early books of his that I wanted to talk to him about because there were stories in there that contained information that was pretty vitally important for me to do research on pertaining to early years of the Los Angeles Star Trek fandom.
Hi, my name is Daniel W. Ring. I've kind of kept up with TrekWorld on YouTube. Shane Johnson just recently passed away. He had 2 books in the Star Trek universe. Mr. Scott's Guide to the Enterprise and World to the Federation. They came out in the late 80s. Something you could maybe do a podcast on. Because again, this is somebody who was latent and kind of unlamented, sadly, and did some contributions to the world of Star Trek. So Bates and David Wise both wrote the Star Trek animated series episode, How Sharper Than a Serpent's Tooth. Both of them have passed away. Again, unlamented, unnoticed, completely. Something to think about.
And he wrote me back and said that in those particular cases, the ones I was asking about anyhow, he didn't actually do any direct person-to-person. He wasn't present for that information or talked to somebody who was present. These were basically stories that were repeated to him from other people. So it was like a syndicated packet of information, which told me that, okay, if he wasn't part of the original discussion, then the stuff I was looking for was the stuff that might have been in the original discussions but didn't make it to one of these kind of books. And finding out that he wasn't in that particular loop, I wanted to leave him alone and respect his time. I wish him the best. He sells a bunch of his stills on eBay. I recommend them very highly because there aren't a whole lot of sources out there right now that are reproducing these kind of photographs for Star Trek fans from that early in the behind-the-scenes production arena of Star Trek. Now, each of these books, when I review them from Files Magazine, usually has a somewhat different method of exposition in the way that they tell the stories. And a perfect example of this is the first section of this book is about an interview with William Shatner. And it might actually tell me, if I'm lucky, the following is a transcription of a part of a one-man show brilliantly performed by Shatner at Middlesex College in New Jersey on November 15th. 1976. In outtakes below, William Shatner answers questions to some of the fans in the audience. So this is another one where this person went and researched, found interviews, and he quotes the interviews in here. Then there's a fictional piece in universe. I'll tell you about Kirk's early days before he was captain of the Enterprise. Fictional, obviously, okay? Non-canon, even more. Now, a lot of people get into canon and non-canon. You don't hear me talk about it too much because for me, I'm interested in whatever made it into the film that went out to our eyeballs through the TV screen and whatever was related to and can be verified as being related to what happened behind the scenes leading up to the creation, publishing, editing, and archiving of that film. I don't concern myself with, Gene did not originally consider the Star Trek cartoon to be canon. It's been rectified in later years, by the way. Paramount did, in fact, recognize it as being canon, but that's my point. Gene said it wasn't. Paramount comes back later and says it was. Why do you think they had 2 different opinions? If you think that the opinions had anything to do with the content, you're wrong. Gene didn't want people to be able to do things based on the animated series and claim they were part of the Star Trek universe just because it was a storyline and not because of money. Most famously was the big argument that happened between him, Nimoy, and Shatner when he goes out and has these edit pendants made for Star Trek. Infinite Diversity, Infinite Combinations, and both of them were just like pissed. The only reason you bought them, the only reason you added to the script, because it wasn't in the script, is so you can sell these things at Star Trek Enterprises and make money. They felt that he was, unfairly cannibalizing Star Trek to get as much money out as they could. They were absolutely right, but I'm not going to make a judgment call on whether that was right or wrong, ethically or morally. It was just a fact. Gene only did things like that if he could make money from them. He was first and foremost, all the way up to the end of his life, a businessman, not a content creator. And then there's some essays like, what is Shatner's bold style of being a commander? They analyze his performance. Obviously, we are also including at least up to Star Trek II, probably a lot longer. I didn't look at the year this was. Then a follow-up on the most demanding mission. Now, interestingly enough, I'm curious as to, looks like all the missions are actually from the TV series. Yes, they don't actually discuss like his time on the Lexington or anything like that. So let's keep looking. The Farragut? Yes, they do not discuss his time on any other starships prior to the Enterprise. And no vision and no visit to the future can be possible without also taking a look at the mirror universe Captain Kirk. All things considered, the screenwriters, the story editors, Roddenberry himself, 1988, by the way, they had no way of knowing that the mirror universe would come into the prominence that it did. It's a shame. I don't know if Gene Kuhn was involved or not. I have to go back and read. You can leave it in the comments. Let me know there. We will continue this conversation. I'd love to know if any of the creative people, maybe Dorothy, if they were involved in any of the later crossovers and what they think about the fact that, all the way up through Star Trek Discovery, 50 some years later, we're still focusing on the mirror universe. Then we're going to move on to Mr. Spock, and it's going to do the same thing. Not only the same things, but the exact same chapter headings as well. Mr. Spock and the mirror universe. So after reviewing Kirk and Spock, it now takes you into here is a list of all the other books we have. Buy them. If you are collecting books from File Magazine, it is imperative that every time you get one of these books, that you check the back of that book, because I have found Star Trek Files Magazine books that were only listed in one or two of these books, depending on when they were printed and when the version it was referring to went in or out of production. So you may actually have a list of books on your hand that you didn't even realize is still possible to be found with the proper searches. I think the hardest one out of these to find is Star Trek Reflection of the 1960s. So there you go, the Star Trek Enterprise Command Book. Everything you ever want to know about Captain Kirk, to Spock, and the actors who played them.